episode of the Millionaire Mentor Method podcast with me, your host, Krystal Kali, also known as the most famous woman in the world. So today I want to talk about invisible assets or intangible assets and why right now is a great time to learn about intangible assets and how they can help you value your company. Because we all know the Fed is tightening, interest rates are rising, inflation is rising. Everybody's budgets are getting tighter right now, including, actually, this is as an aside, but even Mark Zuckerberg said that 2023 is going to be the year of efficiency, which in other words means tightening your budget. So we can all take a page out of old Zuck's book and realize that when the Fed tightens, we need to tighten. When multinational corporations are reviewing their budget and cutting anything that is not absolutely necessary, that's a signal to us that we might want to be doing the same thing. So usually we talk about tangible assets when we're talking about how valuable is your company. When we're evaluating your company, when you're trying to secure funding, we usually talk about things like equipment that you have or inventory. So how much of your product do you have in your warehouse? How much cash do you have on hand? We can even look at things like market share, real estate, land. And of course, on the personal side of things, we can look at things like stocks and bonds and gold and silver if you have it. So those are real tangible assets that we can see and we can put a dollar price on very, very easily. But something that caught my eye is invisible assets becoming more important in even bigger corporations. So here's a really interesting statistic that I was pretty shocked by. 90% of the total value of the S&P 500 index is now derived from intangible assets as of July 2020. So to give you guys a comparison, in 1975, only about 18% of the total value of the S&P 500 was derived from intangible assets of those companies. By 2020, 90% of these companies' stock price and valuation is derived from things that are more difficult to liquidate. So these are things that do have value in the market, but are not something that you can sell for cash quickly and easily. They're often also hard to price. So these are things like brand recognition, trademarks, patents, other intellectual property, such as maybe you created a course about marketing. So that course about marketing is one of your intangible assets. Other things can include things like customer lists. And this is really interesting to me because the availability of cash is already on the decline and it's only going to decline further. And what this means is that in order to keep building your company in this economy, one thing you want to look at is ways that you can build your intangible assets, because these are things that you can build on your own that you do not have to purchase. So one great example is one I just said, which is creating a course. If you can create a course and start to sell it, that becomes one of the ways that you can value your company, especially as a startup. If you have coding skills and you are developing an app, you're developing a website, that's also an intangible asset. If your company has its own app, that's an intangible asset. If you wrote a book, that's an intangible asset. There's also things like goodwill. And of course, that is something that's very, very hard to price. But that's something that you can build right now without a dime. So right now, you can still be networking. You can still be building your professional relationships. You can still be gathering emails. You can be blogging. You can be writing. You can be creating a course. You can be acquiring any trademarks that you need to acquire. You can be inventing something. These are all amazing ways to boost the value of your company. And why would you want to boost the value of your company? I know a lot of us are small business owners in this community, but I just want to point out that just because you think your business is not a business that could possibly go public one day, or you think that you couldn't get a large round of funding, I challenge you to reassess that assumption. So even if you have a mom and pop size store, we all have to remember that customer acquisition is done one at a time. And some of the world's largest corporations all started as a small business in somebody's garage, in someone's kitchen, as a mom and pop sized shop. So don't look at your business as something that can only get to a certain size. You actually might be surprised at how far you can take it. So these intangible assets are something that we all can be working on right now, and it's super important that we work on it, because even though we can't sell goodwill for a cash price, we certainly can build a company with enough goodwill that impacts our bottom line, it impacts our valuation, and it impacts our stock price eventually. And I want us all to be thinking that way, to be thinking that yes, my company can eventually go public. Yes, my company can have a stock price one day. Yes, you need to be thinking about future investment rounds, future funding, even if that's not something that you're looking at right at this second. And that's also an interesting point for all of us out there that may not be super familiar with things that can impact a stock price, but you'll notice that certain headlines of companies will make the stock price shoot up or shoot down. And often those things are not fluctuations in the fundamental, tangible value of a company. Often things that make a stock price volatile are, say, the personal life of the board of directors, the personal life of the founder, or maybe a company makes a culturally insensitive advertisement. All of those things are impacting the goodwill of the corporation, even though that's not a tangible asset. Today, I want you to think about all of the invisible assets that you can be building for your company right now without a dime of investment needed from you. And remember, each one teach one.
The information provided in this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not be construed as financial advice, investment advice, or medical advice. The host is not a financial advisor nor a medical doctor or licensed therapist. Any financial or medical decisions made based on the information in this podcast are made at the listener's own risk. It is recommended that listeners consult with licensed professionals such as CPAs, financial advisors, and licensed physicians before making any investment or medical decisions. The host and creators of this podcast accept no responsibility or liability for any loss or damages incurred as a result of the information provided in this podcast.